There's a common trap that leaders fall into when it comes to change. And it's related to a phase in the change process that's almost always started too soon and gets too much emphasis. As a result, it consistently underperforms. Stay tuned to find out what it is and what you can do to increase its performance and your success with organizational change. Hello, welcome back to the channel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Dawn Marie Turner, President of Turner Change Management. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Every week, I post new videos to help you create healthy and sustainable change in your organization. The phase of the change process that is started too soon and gets too much emphasis, implementation. Now, don't get me wrong. Implementation is a needed and very important part of every change that you want to make, whether it's in your organization or your life. Obviously, you can't change unless you engage and implement new activities and new behaviors and sustain them over time. But implementation isn't the first phase of any change, and it isn't more important than any other phase of the process. Without adequate preparation, you or others won't implement. And even if you get started, you won't sustain those new activities. Unfortunately, many leaders put too much emphasis on implementation. They start it too soon and fail to adequately prepare people for what's needed to implement those new activities and behaviors. The result is often a failed change initiative. Even the leaders who do get something implemented, the desired new behaviors often fail to stick, and thus the value and your return on investment of that event is lost. That's what happened in one organization when they implemented a new enterprise management system. From the IT and the leader's perspective, the implementation was a success. The new software and hardware was implemented, and everyone was trained and knew how to use that new system. However, fast forward a few years later, and the value of that new system had still not been achieved. The data available in the system was inaccurate and incomplete because employees hadn't adopted the system. The situation was worse instead of better. To compensate for the inaccurate information in the system, employees had created and were using Excel spreadsheets on their desktop, which had created a new security risk, more silos, and breakdowns than before the system was implemented. Although the implementation of the technical system had been successful, the overall change was a failure. Kind of like if a doctor said, well, the surgery was a success, but the patient died. The leaders had fallen into the trap of believing implementing the event would lead to change. Implementing a change event doesn't mean any real change has occurred. Similar to buying and installing a new treadmill doesn't mean you will exercise and doesn't mean you will achieve your desired fitness level. One reason implementation is started too soon is because you as the leader announce and launch the change from your level of readiness and not that of the change recipients. As the leaders making the decision to initiate a change, you start your change process sooner. Therefore, you have a higher level of readiness than the people who will do the heavy lifting. Working at your level of readiness, you have the desire to move quickly. You're ready to implement those new activities and behaviors. The problem when launching a change at your level of readiness is you overlook and undervalue the work needed to build the change recipient's level of readiness to match yours and thus prepare them for what's needed to implement those new activities and behaviors. Therefore, you initiate the change, announce it, and then ask, how will we get this implemented? That's the wrong question to ask. You need to ask two questions when you are launching change. The first question you want to ask is, what is the level of readiness of the change recipients? Those are the people that will do that heavy lifting. Where are they on the continuum of change? The continuum of change is that predictable pattern that we all move through when confronted with change. The second question, what is needed to build their level of readiness to ensure that they're prepared for the implementation and can fully adopt those new activities and behaviors? These questions address the preparation needed to create the readiness so that people are able and feel capable of engaging and adopting those new activities and behaviors. That's what one executive team in a large manufacturing company discovered after they called me in to help them manage their employee resistance. They had recently announced a large transformation for the organization. And as they described the employees, they were pushing back. So I asked them to describe what the resistance was. And it was obvious as they described the behaviors that it wasn't resistance. Ironically, the employees were engaging in readiness building behaviors. However, because the leaders had launched the change from their level of readiness, which was much higher than the employees, and they were working with a resistant mindset, they couldn't see, nor did they recognize the behaviors. I did a previous video on how the resistant mindset tricks you into seeing resistance where there is none. I'll post it in the show notes below. The executive team had been working through the problem and defining the solution. In essence, preparing for change for almost 18 months. They were in the implementation phase of readiness. The employees were not. The questions, concerns, issues, criticisms the employees were raising were the same ones the executive team had talked about over the past 18 months. It was clear the employees weren't rejecting the change. They wanted the event. And their questions and comments were part of the normal human process needed to raise their level of readiness. In launching the change from their level of readiness, that executive team had missed two critical steps needed to prepare their employees for implementation. The first was adhering to the law of change. That is helping their employees understand and internalize the need for the change. The second, creating the time, the space, and the activities for those employees to understand, create, and work with a meaningful outcome story. Although the executive team had internalized a clear understanding of the need, and they had an outcome story, the employees had not. And they were not being given the opportunity to create that stable base for engaging in all of those new activities. Thus, much of the feedback the leaders were receiving and interpreting as resistance was the employees' attempt to meet that need and build their readiness. If people don't have a sufficient level of readiness for implementation, your progress on your implementation is an illusion. And it's unlikely any of those new behaviors will stick. Your implementation of new activities and new behaviors can only be successful if you have the level of readiness to enable people to begin engaging in them, to get a sense of what it looks like, what it feels like, and be comfortable and competent to move into an unsafe space and some uncertainty to try out those new activities and behaviors. To get that level of readiness, you must make time and space to prepare people, build that level of readiness needed for implementation. If you have found that your past change initiatives have suffered from jumping too quickly into implementation, take our 10-day challenge. Get a sense of what's required to build that readiness to create a healthier and more sustainable change environment in your organization. And if you're ready to transform your organization to a change-ready organization, reach out. Let's have a conversation. Bye for now.